Limp Bizkit bassist Sam Rivers, dead at 48. On the 18th of October 2025, the music world was shaken by the loss of Sam Rivers, bassist and founding member of Limp Bizkit, who passed away at the age of 48. Known to millions as the heartbeat of the band, Sam's deep grooves and steady presence helped shape the nu metal sound of the late 1992s and early 2000s. From his beginnings with Fred Durst and John Otto to the worldwide phenomenon that was Limp Bizkit, Sam's story is one of raw talent, resilience, and the stage lights were always brightest when they hit Sam Rivers. Not because he demanded attention, but because his bass lines carried the heartbeat of a generation. While Fred Durst spat fire into the microphone and Wes Borland painted soundscapes with his eccentric guitar riffs, it was Sam who held the ground steady, the pulse that made Limp Bizkit more than just noise, more than just anger, more than just a band. On October 18, 2025, that heartbeat stopped. Sam Rivers, just 48 years old, passed away, leaving behind not only a band, but an entire community of fans who had grown up to his sound. The announcement came through Limp Bizkit's official Instagram, where his bandmates called him pure magic, the calm in the chaos, and the soul in the sound. The words stung because they were true, because Sam had been the quiet anchor in a storm of fame, chaos, and controversy. The cause of death has not been confirmed, though his history of liver disease and a past transplant hint at battles he had been fighting long before his final curtain. Rumors swirled, as they always do in moments of shock, but the truth was simpler. A man whose music defined an era was gone, and the silence that followed was unbearable. This is not just a story about death. This is a story about music, legacy, friendship, and before the headlines, before the shockwaves that swept across the music world, Sam Rivers was just a boy in Jacksonville, Florida. A boy with a dream, a bass guitar, and an unshakable love for sound. To understand why his passing at 48 left such a void, you first have to understand who Sam was before he became the bassist of Limp Bizkit. Before arenas screamed his name, before his low-end rumble became part of the soundtrack to an entire generation's angst. Born the 2nd of September 1977, Sam's earliest years were shaped by music. He picked up guitar first, later finding his true voice through the bass. Where others craved spotlight, Sam craved rhythm. Bass was his way of holding everything together, the steady pulse that gave meaning to chaos. In interviews, he often admitted he was less concerned with being seen than with being felt. A musician's musician, humble and precise. Those close to him described him as soft-spoken, even shy at times. He wasn't the wildest personality in the room, nor did he try to be. But when he strapped on his instrument, he transformed. His sound was aggressive yet deliberate, heavy yet controlled. He had an uncanny ability to make songs hit harder, to give the rawness of Limp Bizkit its backbone. In his late teens, Sam worked at Chick-fil-A, where a fateful friendship with John Otto, a drummer with a knack for hip-hop-inspired beats, would change his life forever. The two bonded over rhythm, spending long nights playing, talking about music, and dreaming of something bigger. Through John, Sam was introduced to Fred Durst, a charismatic rapper and tattoo artist with explosive energy. That small trio, Sam, John, and Fred, would become the seed of Limp Bizkit. In 1996, they found their missing pieces. Wes Borland, the experimental guitarist who brought theatrics and unpredictability, and later DJ Lethal, whose turntables fused hip-hop into the heavy riffs. Together, they created a sound that didn't fit neatly anywhere. It wasn't pure rap, it wasn't pure metal, it was something different, something raw, something alive. Sam thrived in that chaos. While Fred was the fire and Wes the madness, Sam was the anchor. Quiet, consistent, grounding. Fans felt it, even if they couldn't articulate it. He was the calm in the chaos, as the band would later call him. By the late 90s, Limp Bizkit wasn't just a band, it was a movement. Their albums $3 Bill, Y'all Dollar 1997, Significant Other 1999, and Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water 2000 propelled them to global fame. Tracks like Break Stuff, Nookie, and My Way became anthems of teenage rebellion, and behind every riff, behind every roar, was Sam Rivers holding it all steady. But success came with shadows. Fame magnified every flaw, every conflict. Sam, unlike some of his bandmates, wasn't always comfortable in the spotlight. He wanted to play, to create, to keep the rhythm alive, but the chaos of fame, the endless touring, the demands of a hungry industry took a toll. Still, those who knew him saw the heart beneath the music. Sam wasn't just a bassist. He was a brother, a friend, and a quiet soul who found peace in the very thing that made him famous: music. The media quickly picked up the story, headlines flashing across major outlets. Limp Bizkit bassist Sam Rivers, dead at 48. News anchors spoke solemnly, rock journalists wrote tributes, and social feeds filled with videos of Sam in his prime, head down, fingers locked on the strings, carrying the sound that defined an era. In Jacksonville, Florida, where Limp Bizkit was born, the local community felt the loss deeply. Sam wasn't just a rock star, he was a hometown kid who had made it big, who had taken his music to the world and brought recognition back to his roots. Fans gathered outside local record stores, leaving flowers, posters, and handwritten notes. Some even gathered outside the Chick-fil-A where Sam and John Otto had first met, turning a fast food parking lot into an impromptu shrine for the beginnings of a legend. That day, October 18, 2025, will forever be etched into the timeline of rock history. It was the day the music world lost more than a bassist. It was the day a band lost its anchor, a family lost its brother, and a generation lost a piece of its sound. And yet, even as grief spread, so too did reflection. People began to speak not just of how Sam died, but of how he lived, his humility, his strength, his rhythm. For some, that reflection was a form of healing. For others, it was only the beginning of a long mourning. The day Sam Rivers passed was a day filled with questions, confusion, and sorrow. But in its silence, it also carried echoes of every stage he ever stood on, every crowd he ever moved, and every life his music touched. The shock of Sam Rivers' passing didn't come in the form of flashing police sirens or a sudden violent scene. It came in the quiet heartbreak of an announcement, one that rippled outwards from Limp Bizkit's official Instagram page and into the lives of millions. Yet, for those closest to him, the discovery of his death was something much more intimate, more personal, and infinitely more painful. For Fred Durst, John Otto, Wes Borland, and DJ Lethal, the news wasn't received as words on a screen. It was lived in real time, in hushed phone calls. The shock of Sam Rivers' death did not come with flashing lights or the chaos of sirens. It came quietly, with a phone call. The kind of call that changes the tone of a room, the kind of call that makes the air feel heavier. For the world, his passing was revealed in a carefully worded Instagram post. But for those who loved him most, the discovery was something much more personal, raw, and intimate. For Fred Durst, Limp Bizkit's unpredictable and fiery frontman, the moment was surreal. He had shared decades with Sam, from grimy clubs in Jacksonville to sold-out arenas across the world. When the words reached him that Sam had passed, his first reaction wasn't anger, but disbelief. Fred had always known Sam as steady, reliable, the quiet force that grounded the band's volatility. To imagine a world, let alone Limp Bizkit, without him was like imagining music without rhythm. John Otto, Sam's cousin and the band's drummer, took the news perhaps the hardest. Their bond stretched back long before fame, to childhood, to shared meals and conversations that predated music. They had once stood behind a Chick-fil-A counter together, dreaming of making something greater, and then they had actually done it. To John, Sam wasn't just a bandmate, he was family, blood and soul. Losing him was like losing part of himself. For Wes Borland and DJ Lethal, two musicians who had always leaned on Sam's stability, the news cut like glass. Wes, known for his experimental theatrics and eccentric stage presence, had always relied on Sam to provide the grounding weight beneath the chaos. Lethal, whose turntables brought hip-hop into Limp Bizkit's sound, had often described Sam as the guy who kept us sane. The discovery that he was gone stripped them of more than a friend, it stripped them of balance. The announcement was public within hours, but for Sam's family, the discovery was private, devastating, and unrelenting. His relatives, who had watched him rise from a shy Florida kid into a global rock star, now faced the silence of his absence. They knew his struggles, the battles with his liver, the shadow of disease, the exhaustion of life on the road. But knowing the struggles did not soften the blow of losing him. When news broke, fans filled the void with memories. Some remembered the first time they saw Sam live, his head bowed as he locked into a groove that seemed to shake the walls. Others remembered interviews where his humility shone through, where he downplayed his role in shaping one of the biggest bands of a generation. Still others recalled the moments when Limp Bizkit's songs Sam helped build carried them through anger, heartbreak, or the confusion of growing up. The discovery of Sam's death reverberated across the internet. Social feeds turned into virtual memorials, clips of live shows, lyrics typed out as tribute, photos of fans meeting him backstage. "Thank you, Sam," became the chorus of the day. And yet, beneath the tributes, there was a quieter realization. Sam had always been there. For more than 30 years, through trends and controversies, through albums and tours, Sam Rivers had been constant. He had endured where others might have burned out. He had played with the same steady rhythm, the same quiet humility, whether in front of a crowd of 50 or 50,000. And now, suddenly, he wasn't there. Even seasoned rock journalists admitted that this loss felt different. One wrote, "Sam wasn't the loudest member of Limp Bizkit, but he was the most essential. He was the gravity in their orbit. And now, gravity is gone." The discovery of Sam's death did not just shake fans or unsettle the band. It reminded people everywhere of how fragile life is, even for those we imagine as larger than life. The man who had once stood steady beneath roaring guitars and thunderous drums was human, vulnerable, mortal, and his passing was a stark reminder that even music's strongest heartbeats can fade. In those first days after the announcement, grief blurred into reflection. The discovery of Sam's death wasn't only about loss. It was about remembering the life behind the legend, the man behind the music, and the humanity behind the sound. The passing of Sam Rivers was not framed as a crime scene investigation, but for fans and journalists alike, the days following his death carried the same qualities of mystery and urgency. There were unanswered questions, swirling rumors, and an aching need for clarity for those who loved him personally, though the investigation was secondary. Fred Durst's silence, broken only by the initial Instagram tribute, was not the silence of mystery, but of mourning. Otto withdrew from public view, grappling with the unbearable weight of losing both a cousin and a bandmate. Wes Borland, always enigmatic, posted a cryptic but heartfelt sketch of a heart wrapped in barbed wire, a wordless expression of grief that spoke louder than any explanation could. The investigation into Sam Rivers' death was less about uncovering scandal and more about confronting the inevitability of mortality. There were no villains to blame, no mysteries that unraveled into crime. There was only a body that had endured too much, a spirit that had given everything to music, and a family, both biological and chosen, left behind to reconcile with the loss. By the end of October 2025, it became clear that the official explanation, whatever the precise medical terminology would be, mattered less than the human truth. Sam had lived through battles most could not see, and though his body gave out at 48, his music and legacy continued to reverberate. The investigation phase ended not with a shocking reveal, but with acceptance that some losses cannot be explained into healing. They can only be honored. Every investigation, whether it is a criminal case or the quiet unraveling of a tragedy, eventually reaches a point where the fog lifts, where questions sharpen into answers. For those mourning Sam Rivers, that moment came not through police statements or shocking revelations, but through clarity, remembrance, and the collective decision to focus not on how he died, but on how he lived. As the weeks passed after October 18, 2025, speculation around Sam's cause of death began to ease. The official medical reports confirmed what many had already suspected: his long struggle with liver disease, compounded by years of physical strain and prior health battles, had finally taken their toll. There was no scandal, no sensational twist, just the sobering reality of a man whose body had carried him as far as it could. That clarity, while heartbreaking, became the breakthrough. It allowed fans, journalists, and even his bandmates to shift the conversation. No longer trapped in the uncertainty of rumor, they could finally begin to process grief through memory. They could begin to honor Sam for who he was, rather than dwelling endlessly on the questions of how he was lost. Almost overnight, tributes evolved. Where once the feeds had been filled with speculation, they were now overflowing with stories. Fans posted photos from concerts decades earlier, proudly holding ticket stubs and scratched CDs. Others shared videos of themselves covering Sam's bass lines on YouTube, each groove a quiet thank you. One fan wrote, "I was 15 when Limp Bizkit's music saved me. Sam's bass was the part that always stuck with me. It was like he was keeping me steady when I couldn't keep myself steady." The band, too, began to open up in their own ways. Fred Durst, whose Instagram tribute had shattered hearts with its poetry, later spoke publicly during a live stream. His voice cracked as he described Sam not only as a bassist, but as the glue that kept us all together. John Otto, still grieving the loss of both cousin and collaborator, said in a rare interview, "We fought sometimes, but we always came back to the music. Sam never wavered. Not once." Wes Borland, in his own unique style, created artwork in Sam's honor, surreal, haunting, but unmistakably filled with love. And then there was the music itself. In the wake of his death, Limp Bizkit's catalog surged once more across streaming platforms. But it wasn't just nostalgia. For many, listening became an act of remembrance. Nookie, My Way, Rearranged, and Break Stuff weren't just tracks anymore. They were pieces of Sam's heartbeat, fragments of his soul, still alive through the strings of his bass. That was the true breakthrough, the realization that Sam Rivers had already left behind his confession, his legacy, his story, not in words, but in sound. Every groove, every low note, every thrum of vibration was part of him, and in those recordings, he would never really leave. Even those outside the Limp Bizkit fandom began to reflect. Rock journalists who had once criticized the band's brashness admitted that Sam's talent had often gone underappreciated. One article titled "The Calm in the Chaos" went viral, describing Sam as the unsung architect of Limp Bizkit's sound. Another critic wrote, "You don't notice the bass until it's gone." That was Sam, invisible and irreplaceable at the same time. For the music community, this reframing was cathartic. The endless cycle of guessing, speculating, and debating had given way to something deeper: gratitude. Gratitude for a life spent in rhythm, for the soundtracks of youth, for the proof that music can outlive the bodies that create it. The breakthrough wasn't only about information, it was about acceptance. It was about realizing that even though the heartbeat of Limp Bizkit had stopped, its echoes were eternal. It was about taking the pain of uncertainty and transforming it into the permanence of memory. And for those closest to Sam, that shift brought a bittersweet comfort. His family could finally see him remembered not for his illness, but for his art. His bandmates could grieve without the weight of rumors distorting the truth. His fans could hold on to the grooves that had once carried them through their hardest moments and carry them again now. In true crime documentaries, the breakthrough often comes when detectives find the missing puzzle piece, the lead that unlocks the case. In Sam Rivers' story, The breakthrough came in a softer form, when the world realized that the puzzle had been solved all along. His life was not defined by its end, but by the music he left behind. In a typical true crime narrative, Section 6 is where the investigation tightens, suspects are cornered, and the truth is wrestled from shadows. But in the story of Sam Rivers, there were no arrests, no suspects to be interrogated under cold fluorescent lights. There was no confession scrawled across police transcripts. Instead, this stage of the journey took on a different form, a symbolic confrontation with truth itself. The arrest here was not of a person, but of the grief that had lingered in uncertainty. For weeks, fans, family, and even the press had wrestled with unanswered questions. Was his death sudden, unexpected, or inevitable? Was there something darker at play? When the official confirmation arrived that Sam's passing was tied to complications from his long battle with liver disease, it felt as though the unrelenting speculation had finally been taken into custody. The rumors were arrested. The lies and outlandish theories like the viral falsehood of a bear attack were silenced. Truth had stepped into the room, and the confession came not from an accused figure, but from Sam himself, from the life he had lived, the battles he had fought, and the music he had left behind. His confession wasn't verbal, but written in rhythm and tone. Every song, every performance, every subtle groove of his bass told the story of a man who endured. Through his instrument, he admitted to both the chaos he faced and the calm he brought to others. His art was his truth. For Fred Durst, this period felt almost like a courtroom without walls. He spoke openly, for the first time, about how Sam had been the emotional center of Limp Bizkit. Fred's words carried the tone of testimony, raw and unpolished. Sam was the heartbeat. He held us together when we were breaking apart. We all knew it, even if we never said it enough. His confession was one of gratitude and regret, acknowledging both the gifts Sam had given and the silence that sometimes surrounded them. John Otto, grieving not only as a bandmate but as family, gave his own kind of confession. In an interview, he admitted how deeply Sam's death shook him, how it stripped away the illusion that there would always be more time. He spoke about their shared history, from fast food counters to global stages, and how he now realized that every argument, every rehearsal, every small moment together was priceless. His was a confession of love, a recognition spoken too late, but no less sincere. Even Wes Borland, whose cryptic posts and surreal art had long shielded him from emotional transparency, offered a confession through creativity. The sketch of a heart tangled in barbed wire that he posted online was interpreted as his unspoken truth, that love and pain are often inseparable, and that Sam's absence was cutting in ways words could not capture. The fans, too, had their own confessions. Across social media, thousands admitted how much Limp Bizkit's music, and by extension, Sam's playing, had meant to them during their darkest times. People confessed to screaming "break stuff" in their cars after heartbreaks, or finding strength in the thundering grooves of My Way during lonely teenage years. These confessions were not whispered in interrogation rooms, but shouted into the digital void, each one a testament to Sam's impact. In this symbolic sense, Section 6 did mirror a true crime arc. There was confrontation, there was the revelation of truth. There were confessions, but they weren't about guilt. They were about gratitude, about recognition, about finally saying what had gone unsaid. The public response took on the gravity of a courtroom's judgment. The verdict was unanimous. Sam Rivers was irreplaceable, and his absence marked not just the end of a life, but the silencing of a sound that had carried millions. The band's tribute post became the official statement of record, their testimony etched in permanence. He was pure magic, the calm in the chaos, the soul in the sound. If there was a lesson in this symbolic arrest and confession, it was this: the truth, however painful, is the first step toward healing. Lies, rumors, and speculation can cloud grief, but truth clears the fog, allowing mourning to transform into remembrance. Sam's confession had already been written in the grooves of his bass, and now, with clarity, the world could finally hear it for what it was, a love letter to music, to his fans, to life itself. He had mattered, even in his quietest moments. Sam was never the loudest member of Limp Bizkit. He wasn't the face plastered across magazine covers or the center of controversy. He didn't crave attention or spectacle. Instead, he was the anchor, the calm in the chaos, the one who gave the music its weight and its pulse. Without him, the riffs would have floated, the lyrics would have raged without grounding. With him, everything held together. That was his gift. That was his soul. Reflecting on Sam's story means reflecting on more than just the rise and fall of a nu metal icon. It's a reminder of the fragility of life, of how even those who seem larger than life on stage are still vulnerable, still human, still mortal. His battles with illness, his endurance through pain, his loyalty to music, even when his body fought against him, these are testaments not of weakness, but of courage. And so, his legacy becomes not just the records he made, but the lessons he leaves, to cherish the people around us, to recognize the quiet strengths in those who don't demand attention, to understand that sometimes the most essential parts of a whole are the ones we take for granted until they're gone. For fans, Sam Rivers will always live in the grooves of songs like Rearranged, Nookie, and My Way. For his bandmates, he will live in memories of backstage laughter, the endless miles of touring, and the unspoken trust of knowing that no matter what chaos unfolded, Sam would always be there, steady, grounding, whole. For his family, he will live as the boy who picked up a guitar, the man who became the heartbeat of a band, and the soul who deserved more years than he was given. At the final footage, our mission is not to sensationalize loss, but to honor it. To remember the human beings behind the headlines, to reflect on what their lives meant, and to tell their stories with the depth and empathy they deserve. Sam Rivers' story is not just about a death. It is about resilience, music, and legacy. It is about a man who gave the world rhythm, and whose rhythm still echoes today. If you have been touched by Sam's music, by Limp Bizkit's sound, or by this story, we invite you to join us in remembering him. Share your favorite memory. Play the songs that carried you through. Keep his name alive in conversation, in playlists, in your heart, because every time his bass line rumbles through a speaker, Sam is still with us. And if you believe stories like Sam's should be told, remembered, and preserved, stories of artists, victims, lives cut short but never forgotten, we invite you to stay with us here at the final footage. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join a community dedicated to exploring the stories behind the silence. Every video we create is not just an investigation, but a tribute. Every name we speak is not just a case, but a life. This has been Limp Bizkit bassist Sam Rivers, dead at 48, a true crime-style tribute documentary. This is the final footage.